Remember what you were doing 12 years ago? The year was 2011. Can you think about how old you were, or maybe how old some of the children in your life were 12 years ago? Maybe to jog your memory, I'll share some news items that were in the day. One was the death of Osama bin Laden. The Occupy Wall Street protest was going on, and there was the launch of a brand new video game called Minecraft. Does 12 years seem like a lot of time or a little? For the woman in our gospel story today, 12 years felt like forever, because time drags on when you're suffering, frustrated, and alone, feeling hopeless at the end of your rope. The woman in the gospel is often referred to as the bleeding woman in the Bible. She isn't given a name, but there is a legend that names her Veronica, so I'm going to refer to her as Veronica as I share her story with you. Veronica had a chronic condition. She was hemorrhaging, and she had been for 12 whole years. It's a female problem that we aren't told much about. We just know that she has tried everything to get better. She has spent all her money on doctors, and instead of getting better, she's only gotten worse. A comparable modern-day frustration might sound something like needing help, but the deductible on your insurance is too high, so you can't afford to go to the doctor. Or the doctor you need to see is out of your network. Or maybe Medicare doesn't cover what you need. Or you've tried several treatments and your condition has still not gone away. You have no answers. And then you see a commercial on TV that sounds like there's a drug that will do just the thing you need. But at the end, you hear, side effects may include shortness of breath, diarrhea, flat feet, hair loss, bad breath, rash, blurry vision, heart attack, stroke, or death. So you think, what's the use? It seems like the drug companies only see dollar signs. They don't see you as a person, and they will certainly not talk to you on the phone. Some of us here today can relate to Veronica because you or someone you know is suffering, and nothing they've tried so far has helped. Veronica's disease had a spiritual effect on her as well. In the ancient world, when Veronica lived, the law said that if you were a woman and it was your time of the month, you were technically unclean, which meant you couldn't go into the temple or their church. And if you touched anyone or anything, they would then become unclean as well. For those few days, you had to stay far away from everyone. When you were done, then you had to go through a ritual before you could come back into the temple or be around people. But Veronica never stopped bleeding. This went on for 12 years. In all that time, she couldn't join the worshipers, see her priest, or receive forgiveness of sins the way that they did it back then. She was probably facing a lot of isolation, besides the hopelessness of seeing doctor after doctor with no relief and being flat broke. No doubt, she was desperate and at the end of her rope. But one day, she was sitting at home and she heard that Jesus was coming to town. She thought, maybe this is my chance. This might be my last hope. So she sneaked through the crowd, and her hope was literally turned into faith as soon as she saw Jesus. That's when her thought pattern changed to, if I can just touch the hem of his robe, I will be healed. That's a whole different level from, maybe this is my shot. Her bleeding stopped the moment she touched Jesus. Now, before I continue with her story, I want to point out a danger there is in applying this story to our lives. Because Jesus said, your faith has made you well, people have sometimes believed that this is a formula, that healing works if your faith is only big enough. And those whose prayers for healing aren't answered just need to have more faith. But don't let anyone tell you that it's the size of your faith that matters, because some people have prayed many prayers with a giant faith, and yet they continued to suffer. We can all think of examples like that. We don't know why Jesus healed this woman's disease and not others in the crowd that day. And since we can't answer that, I think it's helpful to think about what else it meant for her to be made well and to go in peace. Might healing happen in other ways besides the absence of sickness? This story is told in Mark right next to stories where Jesus touches and heals someone who is demon-possessed and also raises a dead person to life. What Veronica has in common with them is her state of being unclean and untouchable according to religious law. And I don't think it's a coincidence those stories are together. Jesus' healing power undoes her state of uncleanness. And by doing so, Jesus restored her to the community, called her daughter for all to hear, and he opened the door for her to worship, to be forgiven, to belong, to touch and be touched. When Jesus crossed boundaries, he gave her this hope, and he changed everything. People often think that they need to get clean first before they can approach Jesus. They might assume that they need to have their act together before they can come to church or go to Jesus in prayer. Have you heard the phrase, Christians are called to be fishers of people, but it's Jesus' job to clean them? Sometimes people don't reach for Jesus because they have been turned off by Christians who appear judgmental and who exclude people. They come across as cleaners and sorters of people, and that is not attractive, especially when you're desperate. When my friend John came to the end of his rope and put his faith in Christ, he said that he went from being a dope dealer to being a hope dealer. As followers of Jesus, we can't save or change people. That's Jesus' job. But we can be hope dealers when we reach out to them with love. In closing, I want to point out some hope dealers who were out loving people last week. On Thursday, I presided at Bill Wilcox's funeral. And as people often do at funerals, they showed up to support each other and to hear about the hope of resurrection. Of course it was sad. People were mourning and missing Bob. But there was one little hope dealer there who sticks in my mind. At the graveside service, there was a little boy. He was only about 3 years old in his brand new button-down shirt, cute as can be. He couldn't have really understood what was going on, but he knew that people who were crying were sad. So he went to that spray of flowers in front of the casket and one by one pulled out those red roses and went around hand delivering them to the women who were crying. All eyes were on him, and there were lots of smiles for him. At the same time this was going on, 65 Bethel members were spreading love and hope around our community through the 2-day Rochester mission trip. They went to the Ronald McDonald House to share hope and love with people who are sick by serving a meal, donating blankets, and putting day brighteners in 150 mailboxes. They went to Family Promise, a homeless shelter for families, to paint, donate, and to organize toys and bring meals. Some worked at Channel One that provides food to the hungry. Others went to the Salvation Army to serve food and organize resources. 60 dozen cookies were baked and delivered to homebound members and to Family Promise and to Dorothy Day. I heard a story about a mom and a child who were homeless who had spent the day walking around town. Do you remember how hot it was Thursday? And when they were in line for a meal, one of our people handed the little boy a homemade chocolate chip cookie, and he got a huge smile on his face. 100 hygiene kits were assembled and donated to the Dorothy Day House. 12 blankets were donated to Paws and Claws. Kitchens were cleaned at the Gift of Life Transport House, and landscaping was completed at Jefferson School. Acts of generosity and kindness like these show the world that Christians will love them just the way they are in whatever desperate circumstances they might find themselves in. They don't have to clean up, shape up, or suck it up alone. And that is often the encouragement that people need to have the faith to reach out to Christ to find their hope and healing. If you are the one who is at the end of your rope today, reach out to Jesus and find hope. For those of us who are not, let's find a way to be hope dealers for Christ this week. Amen.